Hello, friends. Now, in this lesson, it's really just going to feel like an extension of the last lesson. In the last lesson, students were comparing two four-digit numbers. Now, in this one, they're just going to be ordering three four-digit numbers from least to greatest. Okay, so I did want to start sharing with you the standards because I think that might be helpful because I know you're going to get reports throughout the year that may have these standards listed. So I thought it might be helpful for you to learn what those standards are, what all these abbreviations are. Here we have MA is for math, 3 is for the grade, NSO is number, sense, and operation. Dot one, that talks about the big overarching standard we're working on, which is understand the place value of four-digit numbers. That's what this entire unit is working on. Now, each lesson is drilled down to a benchmark. You'll notice that the benchmark for today's lesson is the same as the benchmark for yesterday's lesson because we're plotting, ordering, and comparing whole numbers up to 10,000. We technically did all of that in the last lesson. We just ordered two numbers, least to greatest, but now we're actually going to be looking at three numbers. So again, very, very similar to just like what they did yesterday. So we open up with an example, like three brothers playing a video game. How can you order the scores to see who won? Just like we talked about yesterday, there's two ways. We can use a number line to compare the numbers and order them from least to greatest because, as we noted yesterday, the numbers farther to the right are the larger numbers. And then we can also use place value and use to compare the numbers. So if we're comparing these three numbers using a number line, we have 4,326. Oh, again, just like I stressed yesterday, number line and spatial reasoning with number lines is so important. Please help build that foundation. Now it will help your students so much. I promise you, it'll help them in the future. Where should we place 4,326? Well, I know that it would be almost in the middle because in the middle, and see, these are the conversations. Well, what number's in the middle of 4,300, 4,350? Well, right in the middle is going to be 4,325. So 4,326 would be just to the right. Now, look, all of these numbers or the first two are falling in between 4,300, 4,350. That's why this is such a good discussion point. So where would 4,315 go? Well, we know that's going to be closer to 4,300. So maybe right about here, 4,315. And then 4,372. Well, that's going to be in between 4,350, 4,400. 4,375 would be right in the middle. So it's going to be very, very close to the middle. So 4,372. So if we ordered them smallest to largest with starting with number one being this, and you need to establish this because I know right now we're talking about if somebody wins, then, we might say third place would be the smallest. So make sure students don't get confused. Your children don't get confused over that. But we're just going to say number one is the smallest, number two is the middle, number three is the largest. So the smallest is going to be the 3,115. The next one will be 3,226. And then the largest, I keep saying three. Oh my goodness, 4,315, 4,326. You're going to hear me make all kind of goofy mistakes like that. If I make one and don't catch it, shoot me an email. I love to get those things corrected because I promise you I'm going to make it with these just being live video films. Okay, and then 4,372, that one is going to be the largest. Now, just like we said yesterday, they can also use place value. Now, if it is helpful, you do not have to use these place value charts with your children, but it might be something if your students are struggling with place value and with making that connection, then these are a great tool for them to use. It is just that. It is a tool. If they get it just by looking at the numbers, fabulous. But if this tool helps them, that's also great. Okay, so we've got 4,326, 4,315, 4,372. So now if we're using place value, All right, they all have a 4 in the thousands. They all have a 3 in the hundreds. But when we get to the tens, they're all different. What's the smallest one? 1 is the smallest. So that's number 1. 2 is the next smallest. So that would be the second one. And then, of course, 7 is the greatest one. Remember, when we're comparing place value, also stress with our students, we always start with that largest place value. So now they'll use the inequality symbol to write these in order from least to greatest. So we start with the 4,315 is less than 4,326 is less than 4,372. All right. Now, I know that some people may say, wait, the number line just seems confusing. You have to think about a lot of things, where to place that number. But please take the time to practice with the number lines. I promise you it's a great foundation to help your students build. All right, so let's look at an example where I think this is, so what your students will have in their work for today's work, they'll just be given these 3 numbers and say order them from least to greatest. They can choose whichever method. So I have some extra copies here at the end of the PDF. I really think it's fantastic to have them practice with both, practice using the place value chart if they need it, and then practice putting them on the number line so that they can visually see the smaller numbers going from the left to the larger numbers on the right. Okay, so I'll start with the place value, 5,132, 5,142, 5,025. Okay, largest place value first. They've all got a 5 in the thousands. So then we move to the hundreds. Oh, this one has a 0. So that's number 1. That's our smallest number. Next, well, these both have a 1 in the hundreds. So now we got to go to the tens and compare. All right, 3 is less than 4. So that's the next one. And then finally, the largest one, 5,142. Okay, let's talk about the number line. Okay, if I start with 5,000 and then maybe next I go up by 50s, 5,050, I think that would work. Then 5,100 and then 5,150. What great practice for your students. Okay, so we start with 5,025, which is right in the middle of 5,000 and 5,050. So 5,025. And next we have 5,132. Okay, well, 5,150, 132 is going to be a little bit more because we know then past the middle. We know 5,125 is right in the middle. So 32 is going to be a little bit past that, 5,132, and then 5,142, a little bit past that. But what I would love for students to visually see is those numbers, 1, 2, 3, going from left to right, to just continue to enforce that as we move to the right on a number line, the numbers do get larger. So we would have 5,025 is less than 5,132 is less than 5,142. All right, so it's just another way for them to check their work. Now, one thing that I would love to add in here is just keep in mind as you are working through these different lessons with your students that we all learn differently. Personally, when I look at it, I think it's easier to look at place value. Guess why? My spatial reasoning is not super great. If you try to get me to find my direction somewhere without having Google Maps, I'm going to be in trouble. Okay, I'm much more of an analytical thinking, so place value makes much more sense to me. But your students may be much stronger, your children may be much stronger with spatial reasoning, so it may make more sense than to use the number line. So Don't just automatically expect as we're going throughout this math that what makes the most sense to you is going to make the most sense to your child. Let them explore with both of those strategies, see the one that they think makes the most sense, and let them use that one. All right, thanks for joining. We'll see you in another lesson.